25 states of the United States, but I'm very privileged that I am with you this week. I was thinking how to frame the issue of what's going on in Europe, rise of authoritarianism and all kinds of concerns which are concerning you but which are concerning us. We are concerned with some of the evolutions in your country. And I decided to take it a little bit as essay rather than political science lecture. And I will use few images to document some of my thinking about times which we are living, but also reflecting and bringing you a little bit about commonalities between our two countries. Because in order to understand some issues which we are having in mind, I think it's always good to remind ourselves what we went through and where are we and how we Slovaks and Europeans and you Americans are intertwined, interconnected, because then probably we will be better equipped to cope with some challenges. But the first thing what I would like to say, why I am in Montana. This was a question which my family and friends were asking me, why are you going to Billings, Montana? Usually I go to Washington or New York, but then I had little trouble to tell them, but there are three reasons why I am here. One is Josef Luptak, who discovered for Slovakia this lovely city, and he's famous musician, celloist, and he started to talk about Billings, and I met Bill Simmons at his concert where Joseph played Pink Floyd. Atom Heart Mother, very special thing, and during break Joseph introduced me to Bill, and he was telling me that he's businessman from Billings and having some oil changing thing, and sort of I didn't fully understand what I'm going to talk about with this guy, but somehow after Joseph and band played this Pink Floyd, Bill was so moved, and I was moved and he was moved. Then he wrote me, why don't you come along when Joseph comes next time to perform along, and you may say something. So I will try to say something. And that is why, I was thinking how to take the topic. So this is my gratitude to both men, Bill and Joseph, for bringing me here. Now, when I was landing on Sunday in Denver, I was a little worried how officer will handle my passport because I have few stamps from Iraq and some dangerous countries. And there are many experiences of us traveling here once you have stamps. Even if everything is okay, people are getting a bit nervous. So I was nervous standing in front of this officer, and she asked, what brings you to our country? So she was sort of, and I said, I'm going to Week of Peace and Love to Billings. and she said, what? And then sort of, she looked at me and said, go next. So peace and love helped me to get through. And this is Pink Floyd concert, Bratislava. Near Bratislava there is very emblematic place called Devin Castle, where last July, when Slovakia was presiding European Union, there was enormous concert under the rock of that castle, and Joseph was performing among those musicians, and they played all kinds of very innovative things, but it was for me one of the best concerts in many years. And we will move closer. So here is Joseph, who sits there playing, and I was trying to capture pink color. Since so this is not manipulated picture. I was privileged and lucky enough that I could get this image, and you will see Joseph performing in this week, and he's doing several master classes, and on Saturday he will show what music is all about, how that language helps us to understand deeper and be sort of touched. So this is Pink Floyd thing. Now, how many of you been to Bratislava? Could you raise your hands? Wow. My God, so I need to be careful what I'm doing. So when you land in Vienna, I found this image and I call it Crossroad, or Going Home, where I found this Christ with high power cross and this mishmash of Austrian directions. So you can find Bratislava very close to Vienna. And when you come closer, you will see from the street already, which is the most welcoming building. This is Bratislava Castle, which is today a mixture of museum, concert hall, governments, and so on. And when I worked for president, I used to have office there. So this was my oldest office. But Bratislava is also a new place. This is our newest bridge across the Danube River. We have 5 bridges. This one I just photographed a couple of weeks ago. So we usually try to show you only historical things, but this is a bridge which we are very proud of. Now, United States and Slovakia have many things which bond the two countries. Czechoslovakia, country where I was born, was created in the United States. And these two guys, President Masaryk and Milan Rastislav Štefánik, these two images I took in Washington. So close to Dupont Circle is statue of our first president, an image of French general looking, because he was French general at that time. Štefánik hangs in our embassy in Washington, D.C. These two guys, during Woodrow Wilson presidency, together with people from Slovak and Czech diaspora, basically agreed on parameters of new state, which came to being after collapse of Austro-Hungarian Empire. Woodrow Wilson's statue was erected in front of Prague railway station. So today, interestingly enough, when Bratislava, which was used during monarchy time, Pressburg or Pozsony, the German or English, German or Hungarian name, that time there was serious proposal that Bratislava should be called Wilson City, and which is another interesting and funny thing in our relationship. But Woodrow Wilson is highly regarded guy because of birth of new state, and as you know, we lived in Czechoslovakia together with Czechs for 7 years. Who knows what this image, everybody knows Iwo Jima Memorial at next to Arlington Cemetery. But not many of you know that that guy in the middle who was leader of the team, he was born in Slovakia. And his name is Michael Strunk, and he's buried at Arlington Cemetery. Michael Strunk is an interesting case showing how intertwined we are. He came as a young boy with his family, born in eastern Slovakia, close to Ukraine. Then he lived in Pennsylvania area, and then he fought as a young man in Okinawa, this Iwo Jima place, and eventually died, and from that emblematic picture, memorial was made. And only about 10 years ago, U.S. Embassy in Bratislava discovered that he didn't have U.S. citizenship. He had only Czechoslovak citizenship. And they gave him posthumously U.S. citizenship in 2005 or 6, and his sister, who was still alive, was receiving it on behalf of Brother Michael. Who knows what is this and how this thing is connecting Slovakia and the United States? When you are in Air and Space Museum in Washington, and if you want to touch the moonstone, it was brought down by Eugene Cernan, whose parents came from Slovakia. He was last man walking on the moon. Eugene Cernan just passed away in January. He lived in Texas and passed away there. And he came, when I worked for president, he received highest Slovak decoration because we are so proud of him. So he was a man, commander of Apollo 17, last man who stepped on the moon. So I'm stopping here because I would be able to recreate for you zillion little things which brings our two countries together. And United States, after Slovakia, has largest Slovak population because emigration waves brought so many people. Luckily now, we do not have many immigrants, but we have 2 Slovak students who are, where are you Slovaks? From my tribe, they are over there, who are studying at this university. But whenever you are at Air and Space and you touch the moon, you should know that Eugene Cernan brought the peace. Now, we will go a little bit into the topic. Now, I think that when Berlin Wall came down in 1989, many of us, I'm sorry, I think that when Berlin Wall came down, all of us, and it was only quarter century ago, plus minus, we had totally different expectations about how we will evolve. We thought, and even the term was coined, that there is end of history. There will be only democracy, expanding to post-communist world because Eastern Bloc countries collapsed. And democratic model for all of us was so superior that we thought that it can go on and on and on, and only sky is the limit where we will end up with building this type of model. The term ever larger union was created that everybody from these post-communist states, mine included, wanted to join the West, European Union, NATO. We felt that we are rebuilding completely history. So there was a period of enormous excitement and belief that we are only building better and better world, and others will copy it, and we will become global democratic family at some point. There was overarching belief shared by Americans and Europeans that we want to build Europe whole, free, and at peace. And whether you had Republican president or Democratic president, this phrase or slogan was driving US policy towards us. And the United States was helping us to get from one system to another and fulfill the dream which we called, we want to go back to Europe. And back to Europe was not only geographic wish, this was civilizational call. We felt that we want to build country and countries which are having similar models respecting human rights, free political competition. I mean, all what makes rules-based society so attractive. And I think that what we started to build after '89 and the relationship between the United States and our parts of the world and our country and my country now, since Czechoslovakia split in '93 peacefully into 2 states, was that we saw collapse of Warsaw Pact, Comecon, and we saw European enlargement and NATO enlargement. And the United States was helping us and mobilizing all sources within the country to to join the West. So this was something, whether you were from left or right or young and old, I think that this was main thing where US was part of this project, building transatlantic family. Democratic Europe, which is enlarging, and United States together. What happened, however, what we didn't expect, how 9/11 changed the United States and how international order has been changed after 9/11. You in the United States discovered that you are also vulnerable and you can be hurt, and all your political and security, political life started to be influenced, or your feeling what is security and insecurity started to have different meaning. Then all issue of global terrorism, which when after fall of Berlin Wall, people were not talking about terrorism and global terrorism. So terrorism became something which started to drive our societies, politics, and also general public started to feel differently about how things are. And during a reaction of US to these terrorist threats, and particularly 9/11 attacks, was that you started series of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as reaction, believing that you will fix those societies, and believing, okay, let people decide, let them have free and fair elections, and they will be fine. So many of us believe that if you introduce free and fair elections, that society is necessary, sort of almost by definition will start to be plus minus democratic, which was false assumption. And all notion of democracy promotion, which at early 90s worked so well, people knew what US does, what Western Europe was doing towards us. This was welcomed by vast majorities of populations in our countries. But suddenly people started to see US interference into affairs of other countries, even using military force, suddenly differently. And then there was this period of Arab Spring, when we felt even Arabs want to have democracy. Well, for some period, it looked like that, but eventually it turned around completely. An evolution in Arab world created, or Middle East, Greater Middle East, started to create completely new realities for us, and we do not know until now how to handle it properly. Because for Europe, these waves of immigration, a wave of migrants coming from war-torn societies, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on, suddenly we didn't know what to do with them. Moreover, there started to be terrorist attacks on territory of Europe. And suddenly we had terrorist attack in London, terrorist attack in Madrid, even Brussels airport, last year, France. So all people's minds suddenly started to be taken by this new series of threats, very often connected with Islam. And suddenly this cultural issue, who are they? How are we going to deal with them? Is Islam compatible with democratic system? Do we need to have them, not have them, and so on? So it's opened up completely new discourse in our society, which we are struggling, of course, until today. Now, we thought after '89, when former communist bloc countries started to change, we never thought that we will have re-emergence of authoritarianism in our part of the world. We thought, and this was what?
It's on the table now?
No. So then, you don't hear me, or should I speak louder?
We're good.
Okay, fine. Because I tried and it somehow didn't work. What happened that in few countries there were authoritarian leaders, but we felt that they are like relics. Some of them, these are like Soviet leftovers. but no way that something similar can emerge in our part of the world, particularly in those post-communist countries which already made it to EU and NATO. There was general belief once you graduate, you fulfill conditions and they accept you to EU and NATO, you are fine. It could be only better. And Alexander Lukashenko, president of Belarus, is called last European dictator, is his nickname. He's president for 23 years, the longest serving president, because he manipulated system in such a way that nobody can replace him. And everybody was sort of assuming that this is such a unique case, that Belarus is somehow different and probably people tolerate this, but sort of we isolated and excluded Belarus from everything possible, put sanctions, tried this and that. And Lukashenko is governing happily ever since he came to power in 93 or 94. But surprise, surprise, evolution of politics around Belarus and beyond started to resemble in several countries more Lukashenko style than free democratic style of politics. And today we have various degrees and variations of authoritarian leadership when leaders who came to power originally through free democratic elections start to sort of like to be in power and start to change constitutions and rules in such a way that it prolongs their position. And I put surely much longer list, but I wanted to run through few variations of authoritarianism in order to see that it is not related to East or West or Muslim or Christian. Somehow this authoritarian reflex has fertile ground in Europe. We will speak about US later on. Vladimir Putin, Russian president, when he became president, there was a constitution which allowed him to run only for 2 terms. But he didn't like it. So what do? You democratically change constitution, meaning you ask people and people tell you, okay, change it. Yeah? But it is done very cleverly, and at the end, sort of he continues and he can continue until he wishes. Because before that, we believe that Lukashenko is in our part of the world, but there are these Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan. We thought that these stans are having sort of different habits. And they have these lifelong leaders who are then petrified or put to mausoleums and mummified or whatever. They have statues during their lifetimes. But we thought that this is over there, but not close to us. But closer and closer to us, we are having people who are using similar technology of power. And Vladimir Putin invented what some people now even call Putinism as a system. When he recreated completely new image of state, which is based on 3 pillars. First, strong leader. They used to have czars. Church. You know, it was atheist country during Soviet period. Religion was not allowed or suppressed heavily. But now Orthodox Church became part of the game. And Patriarch is body in blessing things what the leader does. And the leader helps to build monasteries and churches and fixing them. And both believe that the best thing for them is to have strong state when state leader and church leader are sort of governing together. And Vladimir Putin has popularity over 80% because whole narrative of state was redesigned And surely opposition, media, NGOs, non-profits, all of them started to be either closed or get under control. Because what you do, if you start to build system which is authoritarian or semi-authoritarian, what you need to do, you need to shut down potential critics. Because checks and balances are worse than what you need. Because if media write about you and your wealth and your misgivings, it's annoying. And why should they if people like you? Now, United States and Western countries were helping Russian non-profits, human rights groups, watchdog groups. They can't operate anymore, or in Russia they created, and it's very sophisticated things which is spreading in these countries, new law. When you receive foreign grant, you have to call yourself foreign agent. And in those societies, if you are labeled foreign agent, it is the worst what you can be labeled, because you are non-patriotic, you are serving others' interests, you are fifth column, or so all bad things. So they allow you to receive, but then you have to call yourself foreign agent. So there are all kinds of tricky things what these guys are capable of inventing. And you are learning only now in the United States how Russia can be efficient. We knew about that because in the last decades we learned about it. You are learning about Russia's capacity to step into your lives and influence your political, economic, and all other things. And Mike O'Flynn knows very well how it feels to be Russian ambassador, and several others are now trembling whether they will not be accused that they met Russian ambassador. So this is one of the things what is novelty in your public life. Viktor Orban of Hungary. This is a young guy in neighboring country of mine who was Western educated. He did everything to help country to join the European Union and NATO. And suddenly Viktor Orban also discovered that he needs to build a system which is unique Hungarian, where traditional values are protected. And whenever you hear that somebody is protecting traditional values, watch it. Because this is what these people, all of them who are listed here, one way or another are protecting traditional values and uniqueness of their countries. So Viktor Orban started also to alter constitutional court, media, and so on. EU started to criticize him because it is departure from agreed issues which they needed to do before they joined. So eventually Viktor Orban started to bash European Union. European Union for Orban is one of the most problematic things now, because EU people constantly are fiddling around telling him what he's doing wrongly, and he's annoyed. So now he started campaign. There are posters all over the country that sort of bad Brussels or something, or we are not a colony. So we are a proud nation and not a colony. So Viktor Orban also reanimated political life through mixing politics, church, and business. And in Hungary today, situation is completely different than in many other countries in European Union. From political science point of view, it doesn't have any more features of free, pluralistic society. And latest protests of their society are against closing down Central European University, which is supported by George Soros, because he is American and he is Jewish and he is wealthy and he is liberal and he is undermining traditional values. And this is one of the best universities in Europe. In several programs in humanities, they rank among 100 best universities in the world. And totally their programs. The current president of university is Canadian professor, so it's a very international body. So George Soros is not teaching and feeding students, but he supported it financially, and since this is very free university, and sort of Viktor Orban and his government 2 weeks ago changed university law, which would allow him to close down. He will not close it down, but will create conditions which university will not be able to fulfill. What he said, since this is Central European University, but funded by Soros, well, he ordered in the law, it says that they should have campus in the United States, parallel to that one which they have in Budapest. But they say, but this is Central European University and we don't need to build campus in the United States. Yeah, but we passed the law. And there were tens of thousands of protesters just a week ago against this attempt to close down the university. So it's not going only against political opposition, media, human rights watchdog types, but even violating academic freedoms, which sort of is going far beyond what population can accept, so there are a lot of protests. Jaroslaw Kaczynski of Poland. This is, for this guy, I think that at some point should be good candidate for Hollywood movie. Because he has a twin brother who died in this plane crash over Russia. And Kaczynski, as a twin brother, is constantly connected to brother who passed away, and is blaming everybody most bizarre way, connecting death of his brother plus 80 elite people from both politics and military, and who went to these visits to Russia. And Kaczynski created a system where he's not having formal office, he's regular member of parliament, but he's chairman of party, so influential and so powerful that he controls everything. They have formally president, they have formally prime minister, they have formally speaker of the parliament, but Kaczynski, short guy, sits somewhere in parliament, but when he comes, sort of everybody stands. And he completely is changing landscape of Polish politics in such a way that many liberal-minded types in Poland feel like dissidents. And currently, the most bizarre thing, we have President of European Council, which is body overseeing prime ministers of 28 minus Britain country prime ministers. And Kaczynski and his people accuse currently Donald Tusk, president of this European Council, former prime minister of Poland, that he blames him for death of his brother. And now there is huge campaign of Poland against guy who is European leader now, because he doesn't comply with logic of Polish independence and values of Poland. So I think that Kaczynski is very interesting case in country which was, for many of us, country with most stable democratic institutions and system among those countries in our part of the world. And suddenly, we look at Poland with this very unusual evolution towards this rather closed type of political environment. Erdogan, president of Turkey. Turkey, as you know, is member of NATO, and after United States, after US Army, Turkey has second strongest army in NATO. And Turkey was candidate for EU membership, and it goes for 20 years, but Turks are having difficulty to fulfill those criteria which EU wants from them. And nowadays there was huge turnaround in Turkey. They had referendum a week ago, because also Erdogan didn't sort of like their constitution. So he did referendum and changed constitution, which would allow capital punishment, which is totally unacceptable in Europe, because if you want to be member of EU, or if you have capital punishment in your legislation, you are completely out, impossible. For some reason, after last year's coup, when they tried to remove him, he came out with this idea that it would be good to have capital punishment. So then it would be good to have longer term to serve, so which would allow him to serve until sort of he would like to serve. So Turkey underwent through very dramatic situation in last half a year after coup and this referendum. And Turkey is critically important country for all of us, for transatlantic family, because of security reasons and their importance in Middle East. Without Turkey, there are many things which we can't control. Flow of migration from Middle East. We can't control many important security issues without them. Nowadays, it will be very interesting how we are going to handle this situation. Your president will meet with Turkish president next month in Brussels, where Donald Trump is going for his first foreign visit. It will be NATO summit of heads of states. So and Erdogan and Trump will meet there. So I think that what's going on in Turkey and with this move towards authoritarianism mixed with religion, because in Turkey there are so many things which are changing, where Atatürk, founder of modern Turkey, which separated religion and religious life and state politics, it is completely turning around, and religion starts to dominate in political life and also in just regular life. If you are in lounge at airport nowadays in Turkey, well, you will not sip your beer or whiskey because it's alcohol. Yeah, and it can be at international airports. So there are many things which cause us troubles dealing with this otherwise very important. And Marine Le Pen, I needed to do a little gender balance because not only men can go wild and try to turn around what they call democracy into something different. So last weekend, as you know, they had elections in France, and all of us Europeans were holding breath that this woman is not going to make it over other guy, because if Marine Le Pen would become president of France, most likely we should forget European Union, because what she may start to do with her thinking of uniqueness of France and protecting traditional values of France and their cheese and wine and Christians, we would be having big trouble. So for second round, Marine Le Pen and Macron, I think that they will show big mobilization in France, which I strongly believe that France will not screw up the game called European Union. But anyhow, what we have nowadays in EU, almost every elections are showing pattern that there are people who are using weaknesses and vulnerabilities and fears what we have. They're showing how clever they are, how they are going to fix it. We will kick out Muslims, we will close borders, we will do this, and we will do these simplistic versions of fixing your problems. And vulnerable people responding to these are capable of voting for them. So Marine Le Pen is today most visible person, female politician, which is very powerful because she is in second round and surely will be around and will be steering politics of France and other countries. So in Europe we are having this wave And I deliberately put her also at the end. She's from Western Europe. She is from a country which is founding member and pillar of European founding fathers of EU, were French and German guys, and France and Germany reconciliation was beginning of building EU. And what we ended up, that even in France they are philosophizing whether EU is good enough or not. Last year was breaking year because you Anglo-Saxon guys, we had a lot of surprises to us. We always thought that whenever we are having our ups and downs and doing better or worse, we always refer to, okay, but look at Britain and look at USA. They always find a way how to sort it out. And they are, Churchill's quote, yeah, democracy is, not good, but there is nothing better, or this type of quotes, or US, it doesn't matter, we will have one Republican and Democrat, we do not mess with these coalition buildings. We always sort of find our way. But last year, not only you surprised yourself, but you surprised us. And in Britain, which was helping us to join EU, and you helped us to join EU and NATO, last year you produced through Brexit and result and conduct of elections and rhetoric during elections, a lot of surprises to us. So whenever we refer to both these countries, that look at them and you will find solutions or believe. I think that after last year you are slightly lost credibility as a country we look at for solutions and anchoring our anxieties that, okay, don't worry, we will fix things, because I came to Washington a week after elections, and I attended several seminars at think tanks, and many people, when I went home, were asking me, okay, you visited these think tanks, what they said about international relations, how US will act in international arena. So, and I had to report rather Dadaistic conclusion, because there were two most frequent answers which I was getting from political analysts and sort of knowledgeable types, and among them were sort of very smart people. So when I asked the question, how international relations of US or position of US will be, so two most frequent answers were, I don't know, and second, too early to say. Well, with this, you can't build global international relations if country like this, which always knew, they could say, okay, a little bit more multilateral, a little bit less multilateral. Fine, fair enough. But if you get answers too early to say, and I don't know, I think that this is with Britain as well. When you ask British diplomats, what and how these negotiation and these controlled sort of divorce will look like, well, they sort of don't know. Theresa May just called snap elections because she's nervous whether this divorce process, whether she has good mandate or not for that. So also Britain is now full of anxiety whether Scots will, damn it, not have referendum. And whether Northern Ireland will not start rebelling and so on. So I think that there are many open issues which both elections, Brexit and elections in the United States created. And just sort of who in Europe celebrated results of US elections and Brexit? Who do you think celebrated results? Exactly, these guys. Yeah? I think that this is showing that something is going on in transatlantic family, that some degree of dissatisfaction, anxiety and also search for radical solutions and radical change entered our lives. And it is fascinating, one would say scary or this, but just from looking at situation, I think that this is very tricky period what we are living, and which I'm heading to the end, where I think that there are few challenges ahead of us. One is that we have to accept that we have high degree of unpredictability. Before that, we could predict what will happen and how things will look like, and you could base international relations based on it. Today, we have, and for some time, we will have high degree of unpredictability. And if I would have students in front of me now, capacity of professor of international relations to predict what will happen equals to students. Because we failed so many times predicting things which were obvious, that we have to admit that there is not much difference between professors and students. And it is annoying for academics, isn't it? Again. And now, this clash of cultures is something which is driving debate. We thought that history and religion will matter less and less. Today, we are discovering that history and religion and cultural aspects matter more and more, whether we like it or not. All debates are whether what nationality are you and what religion are you. We thought that this is only Balkan obsession, but today it's general obsession. We started to study who we are and who is he and what religion does have. We studied whether some religions are compatible with concept of love and tolerance, because we think about some religions that they are non-compatible with that. If you arrive to these type of conclusions, then you develop policies. Then you ask people to confirm that you are right. So these cultural aspects are playing more and more important role. And I think that we need to be tougher also with clergy of all denominations to admit that in many cases they are not part of solution, but they are part of problem. And I think that this is an important point which we need to agree, and don't let our priests and imams and whatever monks we have to get along with creating fuss or not helping people or not helping countries or situation, I think. And here I'm failing almost with every community. We need to invite them to speak and be challenged. Usually we do not challenge priests because they have patent on truth. And they are telling their worshippers their version and ask them to, and I think that whenever, I don't know whether they would allow political science department to have imam and priest to come and talk, because usually we are uneasy about that, but we need to challenge a little bit this. But this is my very personal thing, and I'm happy tomorrow I will meet some priests, Paul, so I will experiment a little bit whether they will survive some of my language. I think that we have to sort of calculate in our thinking and acts possible fragmentation of the West. With Brexit and with emergence of those authoritarian guys who are saying that we are different, we need to be more closed, or we need to find arrangements, we need to sort of, if Britain was able to leave, and it will be painful 2 years process of fiddling around. It will not be easy. But anyhow, I think that we can't rule out that all post-Second World War arrangement, that it may change. Because if we will not be smart enough, it may happen, and before that it would be, everybody would rule this out, because we were just enlarging, and now we are sort of holding breath not to fragment. But these are facts and realities which we see in whole transatlantic family. How to rethink what we do and how we do things in this period of anxiety and clashes which before we never see. Also, radicalization and use of force became part of our reality. 10 years ago, we used the term soft power. Soft power was something what we liked. Power of ideas, power of example, friendships, this. Today, our neighbor, Ukraine, over 10,000 dead in last 2 years. I mean, annexation of Crimea, first case of changing borders after Helsinki and all of this. Now, all terrorist acts, you have non-state actors which are using hard power, not soft power. So our lives and international relations, as what you see is more and more use of hard power and less soft power. Because we believe that fixing some of the problems, soft power is not good enough, we need to hit or we need to fight. And I think that we see it yet again in Europe, which we thought that it's gone, because still we have people who lived through Second World War, and we know that we are quite good at creating wars in Europe and beyond. And even Donald Trump recently sort of realized that, damn it, those Syrians, I'm fed up with these chemical weapons. This is red line, and enough of this, and bing, and well, but find, a few things you can do, but you can't resolve many things by military might. Because today, all arrangements with these non-state actors and using hard power and nasty hard power techniques, I think that this become part of our reality. And these non-state actors and propaganda are something which new technologies allow to recruit people for doing bad things. Today, there are many armies or many groups which are not part of states. They are just coalition of like-minded radicals who can achieve their goals and challenge our countries, our states. And these will not disappear for sure, but we need to adjust both psychologically but also militarily and diplomatically, so these will be tough things. And these new communication tools are not only bad guys are using, we should be smarter and better using them for us to develop belief and not to get into these depressed feelings. So we need to learn it more and better. And here, particularly young people should help us, all the guys, to handle and master these, because very often we are a bit scared how to use them. And in conclusion, I think that United States and Europe, without no doubt, we are best partners. You will not find better partner. Economically, politically, our peoples are mixed, intertwined, and so on. So we should remind ourselves that there are no closer partners than the United States and Europe. And I think that we need to remind ourselves and build on that. We are still communities of shared values, even if we have our sort of ups and downs, and we shall just overcome. And two images of people whom I like and who inspire me is Angela Merkel was getting an honorary doctorate at a university where I used to work 2 years ago. And you know that Angela, she is, since I'm an academic world, she's physical chemist by training. So she was not trained politician and luckily not as a lawyer. She's physical chemist because lawyers are problem a lot. So, and Angela Merkel came and she was, all of us saw her speaking and then she was on academic soul. She is the most powerful woman in the world. Former physical chemist, daughter of priest. Very unusual type, but with absolute self-confidence, and we are lucky in Europe, and we are lucky as transatlantic family that we have women of this wisdom, courage, and political skills in this malaise situation, leading, basically, she is most powerful European politician. And I think that she is one of those who I believe this fall will win again elections in Germany. And Germans will not experiment with anybody else. And who knows what this monument is? This is my last slide with which I would like to close this. Václav Havel, who was president of my free country, Czechoslovakia, after Velvet Revolution. I was lucky enough to know him quite well, and I accompanied him on his first official visit to the United States. I was part of his delegation as member of Slovak government, and he was federal president, and we came, and George Bush Sr. was president, so we were in White House with Václav Havel. And Václav was short guy, Bush was tall, but story of Václav Havel was very interesting. Former dissident who spent 4 years in prison. He couldn't study at university because communists didn't allow him since he was critical and so on. But when he came to your country, I saw how US presidents treated him, how they were proud that they meet this funny guy, that time smoking heavily. We were staying at Blair House, near White House, and he was not allowed to smoke inside. And he was bitching, what kind of country is this? Violating his rights. He had to get out of building and smoke outside, surrounded by security, because he did not smoke. Later on, he had to stop for medical reasons, but anyhow, Václav Havel always reminded us that you need to think bigger. You need to think about culture, values, respect, and most of all, you need to sit down and talk if you don't agree. So after Václav Havel passed away, his friend artist wanted to build monument to Václav Havel. Havel would hate to have sort of statue or something which would depict his body. So he created these 2 chairs. This is monument to Václav Havel, where you can sit. There were people sipping wine or something. I asked them to leave, and I took picture of them. This is open place in Old Town Prague, where you can sit down and chat. And there is linden tree in between. And linden tree is symbol of all Slavs. People of Slavs, whether Yugoslavs, Slovaks, Ukrainians, Russians, and so on. So it's our mythical linden tree is our symbol. So there is artists creating this linden tree surrounded by bronze ring and 2 chairs where you can sit down, have drink, and talk. If you agree or disagree, but talk and think and have good time while you are solving complex issues. So I think that this is one of the great messages which I learned during Velvet Revolution and seeing this ethical uprising which we did, which helped us to overcome many complicated issues. And I think that the legacy of artists was just very interesting and important. So when you are in Prague next time, you ask where is Ministry of Culture, and it's a little square close to Ministry of Culture. You can have drink and probably remember our meeting in Billings, Montana. Thank you very much.